Just because someone's good at sales doesn't mean they're a great people manager.
So if I'm looking to replace a sales manager, who on the team, regardless of their selling ability, has the people skills, can hold people accountable, can communicate clearly? Who are those people? Do we have them on the team?
Founders, sales leaders, coaches, if they could fix one thing today to stop losing deals, what would you say that would be? Alyssa, welcome to Tea Talks.
Hey, I am so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. First of all, you're known as the notorious plant killer. Who are you?
I am a serial entrepreneur, a podcast host times two, a notorious plant killer, and really just someone who sees everything as interconnected. And that's really what my life has been. So research background, built multiple companies, starting a software startup. Hopefully that answers your question. But the real answer is I am a lot of things and a lot of nothing.
Love it. Love it. Let's jump right into it. Sales. Most companies lose deals long before the sales team ever talks to the client. What's actually going wrong behind the scenes?
I think what's going wrong behind the scenes is that a lot of companies say that they are customer-centric because it is the right thing to say and it is the public relations friendly thing to say. But at the end of the day, your company is really one of three things. You're profit-focused, meaning you're here to make as much money as possible. You're product-focused, which means that you are here to build something beautiful and that you love. Or you're customer-focused, which means you're going to deliver on something that really drives something home for your customers. You can be one of those three things. There is no shame in being any of those things. But we all pretend like we fall into that customer-centric box because it sounds better than telling your prospective customers, you're third on our list. We're actually more focused on product and profit than you. And so I think what's happening is that since companies aren't willing to come to terms with the fact that they are product-centric or are profit-centric, they design experiences for prospective customers in a way that makes sense to them instead of making sense to the customer. And so if you really want to design a sale that is closed before you ever talk to a salesperson, you have to think about those initial experiences from the lens of the customer instead of the highest paid person in the room.
That's critical. There's different elements there. Can a company be all three of those though?
I don't think you can truly be all three. I think like a person, you might have elements of your values that say, okay, like, of course I want to work so I can make money so that I can take care of my family. But there's going to be a root that it all comes back to. And if my only goal is to make as much money as possible, but there's no underlying purpose of so that I can take care of my family and live a good life, then I might be profit centric, but I can't call myself, a family person at that point. And so I think you have to look at when push comes to shove, when there's fights in the boardroom, when we're throwing down over something, what is the thing that wins out? Is it being more operationally efficient and improving the bottom line? Is it shipping a product that we're really, really proud of and that we absolutely love? Or are we making decisions? Are we giving up other things for the sake of the customer? And not a lot of companies can say that. How do you make decisions and what is the final straw in that decision-making process? And if it's not the customer, then you have other priorities that come above them. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just making sure that you fully understand that and the trade-offs that go with it.
So from a leadership perspective, I've worked with Microsoft, I've worked with large organizations. There's usually a disconnect. Let's be customer-centric. Let's be customer first. Let's put our customers first. And if the organization is leading towards product or revenue, should they be clear internally so that their sales teams are aligned on what they're delivering for?
I think if you're not clear internally, you're going to have this tension that we feel. And we see it across the organization where sales promises something in a product that doesn't really exist because that's what the market is demanding. Product refuses to build it because it's not on their roadmap. Customer success and post-sales is frustrated because the customer's begging for this, but it's not going to happen. And the leadership team is cutting headcount because we need to improve our bottom line. And so you have all of these different priorities and different viewpoints that really change how we need to think about our relationship with our customer. If you're a product-centric company, stand up and own it on that product. We are building what we believe to be the very best product. And if that means that this product doesn't work for you, that is totally fine with us. And let's disqualify those leads early. Because if you're going to get a customer who wants to come in and have a bunch of customizations and changes and wants to influence your roadmap, they're going to be a bad fit customer all day long. It's going to be friction for you. It's going to be frustrating for your sales team because it's going to take forever to close. Your post-sales team is going to hate it. And product is going to get sick of the never-ending requests for customizations. And ultimately, that customer will churn. But if you just own the fact that this is our product, we think it's the best, we're building something beautiful, take it or leave it, then be happy with the ones who take it and be happy with the ones who leave because they're not a best fit customer for you.
And everything you talked about there is a vicious cycle, right? So from going from customers ask all the way to the product teams to the organizational leaders, everyone's in a vicious cycle of trying to solve for something, but they're all solving for the wrong things. And so if they're solving for the wrong problems, the deal's already lost before sales even touches it. How does an organization or how does an individual solve for this? Is there alignment that has to take place from the top down, or is it from the bottom up? What does that look like?
I think it really has to meet in the middle a little bit. I think top down, we need to come to terms with the type of organization that we are going to be. And if that means customer centricity, then we have to find ways to truly listen to the customer. There's all kinds of solutions out there, all kinds of people who specialize in essentially being the advocate, the true voice of the customer, not some crappy survey that you send once a year, but the true voice of the customer. Does that person who will advocate for the customer's best interest have a seat at the table? Do they get to have as much say in what the customers want and care about as the CFO or the COO, right? Do they have that true push and pull in the boardroom? And then you have to motivate and incentivize your customers and your employees to come and meet you in the middle. If I've created a sales program where my sellers are only incentivized on bottom line efficiency, then they're never going to move it forward. And it means that we're not designing experiences in a way that drives for the customer. So I am one of those people. I truly believe in customer centricity as a core value first and something that you design experiences around. And some of my favorite companies that I've worked with are the same way. And they create these experiences that take people from, hey, I'm interested in learning about working with Microsoft to, okay, I am ready to have a conversation with a salesperson. Because in today's day and age, most people have already decided to make a purchase or not before they've even sent a message, filled out a form, or picked up the phone. We have too much information out there on the internet. There's too much about our companies out there, whether you're big or small. They've already decided before you even know that they exist. And so if you do that well, you can create something where it's sales' opportunity to lose rather than their opportunity to close, because the customer is educated, they understand the implications of their purchase. They maybe just need to fine tune the details, but if they're talking to you, odds are good they've already decided.
What's that conversation all about at that point? If they're already coming to you, so you talked about it's your deal to lose. When they're coming to you, what are they coming to you for?
Validation and an authenticity check is what most people are using that sales conversation for. So just like in leadership, when we're dealing with our team members or we're building relationships with people that we work with, there's that authenticity feeling. And I hate even to use that word because it's almost become like a buzzword in the business world. But there is that feeling that you get when someone just doesn't feel quite right. Something doesn't match, something doesn't fit, right? So if I came on this podcast and you said, Alyssa, you're a notorious plant killer, and then behind me was an entire green wall of beautifully, cared for plants, you would be like, okay, she says notorious plant killer, but there's literally a jungle behind her. That would make no sense. And for those of you watching, there are 2 plants behind me, and I will give you a spoiler alert, they are fake because that's the best I can do when it comes to plants. And so I am a notorious plant killer. That is who I authentically am. And when we come into a sales conversation, when we've already pretty much made the 85% decision that the solution we believe will solve our problem and it's within our budget, or we expect it to be reasonably within our budget, and we're kind of ready to go, we're on our short list, what we're really looking for from that salesperson is, do you and the promises you make match the promises that I've gleaned from your website, from the reviews, from everything I've learned about your company already? And it's when we feel that mismatch, that vibe mismatch, that we will start to kind of get the ick. And that's when you lose the deal. So it's not just about creating an experience where your customer goes, okay, I needed to know this. I needed to know this. Check, 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 check. Now I'm ready to talk to a salesperson. There's that whole second side of it where you meet that salesperson for the first time Does it feel like an authentic alignment with your perception of this brand so far? And if yes, green flags. If no, they're immediately going to wonder how much of your website is a lie? How much did I misunderstand?
There's a lot of factors that you're talking about that goes into closing the deal. If someone connects with someone online or reaches out and says, hey, listen, I want to jump on a call because I've heard something about you, is the right thing to actually get on a call with them at that point? Or they don't have enough information about you at this point, send them enough collateral to see if they're ready first and then get on a call. Because if what you're saying is when they're jumping on the call, it's really, we've made the decision, we're ready to move forward. But if that client isn't coming in or that prospect isn't coming in with that state of mind, then are you just wasting time on those calls?
Because my immediate reaction was like, no, take the call. They might be a good lead, right? But we have to prioritize our own time and energy. And salespeople burn out so quickly and they end up hopping from jobs to job. And you lose a lot of institutional knowledge when those good sellers leave. And it's hard to keep them already. So let's not make it harder. So yeah, I would say making sure that you have a really good understanding of where your client or prospective client is in that funnel. And it could be as simple as saying like, I am so excited to jump on a call with you. Here are the 5 things that I'm always asked about our product. I wanted to send that question and answer ahead of time to make sure that you kind of had everything that you need. And then maybe like, here are 5 things I need to know in order to make sure that I'm spending the most valuable time with you. And send them a little couple questions in an email or however they reached out to you, because nobody wants to have their time wasted. And if we can find ways to get some of these answers and make sure you don't repeat them on the meeting, because then it will look like you didn't even, pay attention or respond. But if you can save that time and give people something back they can never have, which is time, then you will start to create that authentic relationship. They will see that this is a no BS experience and they'll feel that much more comfortable with it, assuming that that is the brand that you want to put forward, that you bring value, that you're not wasting their time, and that you're going to make sure that whatever you deliver is the best fit for the customer above all else.
I love that. I love that. So it requires you to be prepared. It requires you to be organized. It requires you to know and be intentional about your customer, your prospect's journey at that point. And
Yeah.
and this goes back to, the deal is yours to lose, because if you don't have all of that in place, you're not prepared for all of that, the deal is yours to lose, essentially.
Exactly. And if you are spending your sales time doing education, like true education about like, what is my product? How does it work? All of that good stuff. You are spending what could be invaluable time on that. That's stuff that can be automated. You can put that on your website. You can have a guided tour. You can do a walkthrough. What you can't do is answer their in-depth questions or understand their specific problems or dig into what good looks like in the future for them. You can't do any of that if you're spending all of your time just doing a product demo. Honestly, like if I could eliminate all product demo calls, I would be so happy and relieved. Like, go ahead and watch my product demo. Here it is, free and available. Decide if it fits for you. Let's talk about specifics. Let's talk about your use case. Because the number of times I get on a sales call and I watch the same exact product demo given by a live human that I already saw on YouTube, it's just a waste of time for me. And it just tells me that you're either not confident in your marketing materials or you assume that I haven't done any pre-work and therefore need to be kind of handheld through this. I'm not that person. So let me ask for what I want. Let me make my own decisions and then take yes for an answer and let's talk about the deal.
I love that. I love the focus on the marketing material and then the sales, because there's a relationship there. These teams do not interact. They do not connect. One's behind the scenes. One's behind a wall where you cannot get through to them, and they're making decisions. And the other is out in the field. But there's a big barrier in a lot of organizations I've seen. I probably say majority of the organizations I've seen, especially large ones. How do you take that wall down?
There's a couple of companies that I am consulting with right now that are moving to a go-to-market model, is what I will call it, where in the olden days, there would be a marketing division and a sales division, and sometimes a post-sales division or like what they would call customer success. Some of the companies that are really doing well right now are moving to what they're calling a go-to-market model, where sales, marketing, customer success, anyone that touches revenue or interfaces with a customer in any meaningful way falls under one group. And they're looking at how can I make sure that that journey is fully holistic so that I open my funnel at the beginning with my sales leads and my marketing leads coming in and my inbound leads. How can I ensure that that funnel narrows quickly so that my sales team only gets the most qualified leads, the ones who are truly going to get value from our product, so that there's a secondary funnel that opens at the back end that creates all kinds of new opportunity for cross-sell, upsell, expand, and renew that leads into that customer success. So rather than saying it's marketing versus sales versus CS, saying we are go to market and our responsibility is to help the customer go from I'm interested to I'm buying to I'm ready to buy again in the least friction way possible and without blame for other groups. And I think that's part of the reason why some of these silos still exist is it's a lot easier for sales to blame marketing for bad leads and for marketing to blame product for, faulty product or bad features or bad fit features, and customer success to blame sales for bad deals that didn't turn into something good, and everybody blames everybody. But if we stopped, pretending to be that Spider-Man meme where we all point at each other and focused on how can we actually do something that is to the benefit of the customer, we would see a lot less breakdown along the way, and ultimately we'd all be better off for it.
And that's a big shift. That's not an easy shift to reorganize an organization. Yeah,
Yes.
huge. Where do they get started?
I think it first comes to that where we originally started this conversation. Are we a customer-centric organization? Is that our main priority? If yes, then you start moving to this go-to-market model. If you're going to say, okay, are we a profit or operation-centric company? Yes. Okay. We're going to stay in these silos because we're focused on necessarily bottom line, not necessarily long-term, like short-term wins, not necessarily long-term customer retention. And be okay with that and be upfront with it. Because don't pretend like you're going to keep these customers when when they ultimately don't renew. You have to accept that churn is going to be an inevitable part of your business. And if you're a product company, then you need to say it with your whole chest and say, this is our product, take it or leave it. And you spend more of your time on weeding out bad fit customers, and that changes your marketing strategy. But when we are not self-aware enough as an organization, as leaders, as people who are working inside of this organization, this is where we end up with friction because it becomes a conflict in our ethos and what we care about. In the same way that if your boss said that he was the most people-centric person ever and yet micromanaged every minute of your day and made you take off time to take your kid to the doctor, right? Those two things don't connect. The same thing happens with our organizations, and yet we let it slide because we excuse it as, well, it's too big to change or it's too big to move. People can change, organizations can change. You just have to understand who you are, be self-aware, and make a very specific plan to go do it.
And I think if we're talking about people, let's talk about employees for a second. If that messaging is not clear, and if you're saying that I'm a customer-centric organization, but when you come inside, you're really a product-centric organization, you've brought in the wrong employees. You've brought in the wrong people, and now they're torn. Tell me about that.
I think it is one of the most fatal mistakes that you can make in building your company is not being honest with the people that work inside your organization, what it is, what they can expect, and the type of people that will do well here, right? So I've worked for a lot of organizations who will say they're customer-centric, again, because it's the right thing, the quote-unquote right thing to say. And then you get into that organization, and I am someone who really, truly, I define myself as someone who is people-centric. And you get in there and it's so disheartening and it steals little bits of your soul, whether you realize it or not. And then you end up doing worse, poor work. Everyone's frustrated. There's a ton of friction. You spend all of this time on meetings and emails and other such nonsense. And it just makes for a really poor work environment. And one of the things that I've discovered in my research is that there is a true correlation between the employee experience and the customer experience. And then the customer experience drives the overall perception of your brand. And the perception of your brand drives the overall revenue and growth potential of your business. It all goes back to that employee experience. And employee experience is the ceiling of what you can achieve for customer experience. So if your employees are happy and aligned with your business mission, vision, and goals, they will do great work for you and then thereby deliver great experiences for your customers, which will thereby improve your brand perception in the market, which will thereby improve your brand's positioning and win you more deals and keep your customers longer. I'm not saying you have to give all of these amazing, incredible perks to your employees, although, you would be welcome to do so. But so much of people's frustration has nothing to do with the perks and so much more to do with their perception of who the company is versus what the reality is. And if you can simply be honest about who you are and where they're going, you will find right fit people who are perfectly content and okay with that. And that's who you should be looking for.
And I've seen many, many times. I spent 2 decades in corporate where individuals come into certain roles and then they're promoted, they're moved along, they're saying, "Hey, you've been great at sales. Let's make you a sales leader."
Yeah.
I've seen that backfire in many terms. What are your thoughts on that? What should the right strategy be in those cases? Because just because someone's good at sales or understands that aspect doesn't mean they're a great people manager.
It is so unfortunate that so many incredible sellers are told the only way to progress in your career, to climb that corporate ladder, to be successful long term, is to climb the people leader route. There are so many incredible salespeople who get, as you said, get promoted. And this probably goes for almost every profession inside of an organization. If you have any kind of skill, you're good at it, you get promoted because naturally, if you're good at it, you'll be able to teach other people how to be good at it. And I think that that is completely the wrong mindset. If someone has the respect for what that skill is and the ability to lead people, that's who you should be promoting, not necessarily your best seller. So you might have someone come in who has never really sold a day in their lives, but they respect the profession. They've done the work to understand the mechanics of it and what goes into it. They understand what good looks like, and they have a unique ability to forge relationships, hold people accountable, explain things, see people for who they are, and almost like a chameleon, adapt to the person that your employee needs you to be as a manager and not necessarily forcing your employees to adapt. Those are going to be the best managers of all time, whether they've sold something a day in their life or not, if they have respect for the profession. But we've all had that terrible sales leader who got promoted because they were good at sales, and they're miserable because they're not getting to do something they're good at, and you're miserable because they have no idea what's happening.
Eventually, that sales leader ends up getting fired. But before they get fired, they've lost 4 solid individuals before the organization wakes up. That's a big hole to come out of. That skill set, that knowledge, including the sales manager themselves, because you can't demote them anymore. They don't want to go back into that. That's embarrassing.
Right. You demote them, you lose them. So your only option is to let them go or make it so that they let themselves go.
Yeah. Exactly. So how do you prevent this from even ever happening?
It is like an age-old question. I think this is one we're all going to be wrestling with for in probably perpetuity. But I think that we as leaders need to be as self-aware as possible. That is the one thing that I hear over and over again. And it's really, really hard. And it takes, conversations like this and coaches and people that we work with and great mentors and great managers to help us see us for not only who we see in the mirror, but what that mirror looks like when we're out in reality and where those two converge, right? The way I see myself versus the way you see me, not necessarily the same. So what is the overlap and what is the truest image we're able to ascertain? And then have the willingness to work on it and to make the changes that are necessary and to take the ego out of it. So if I'm looking to replace a sales manager or install a sales manager, if that is my role in this conversation, I need to look and say, okay, who on the team, regardless of their selling ability, has the people skills, not just like socially extroverted, but can hold people accountable, can communicate clearly, keeps their cool, and doesn't let ego get in the way. Who are those people? Do we have them on the team? And if the answer is no, go source that person. But make sure that you are recognizing the fact that someone didn't get promoted not because they weren't great at their jobs, but because we need a specific type of leader, and then reward them for the things that they are great at.
Yeah. No, I love that. And all the stuff you're talking about here, this is a mindset shift. It's not something that just, you just take a little paper off the shelf and say, okay, I'm going to start doing this. This is to your core.
Yeah.
When did this happen for you? I love that. I love that. And so for everyone watching, our founders, sales leaders, coaches, if they could fix one thing today to stop losing deals, what would you say that would be?
Put your customer at the table, bring them into the story. There are people out there who are willing to tell you exactly what they're looking for, what their problems are, what they want to see, how they want to see it solved, how they want you to explain it to them, how they want to be sold to. All you have to do is have the bravery to ask and the self-awareness and lack of ego to actually listen.
I love that. And how do you ask? Existing customers, new prospects? Who do you go to?
I would start maybe with your existing customers, and asking simple questions of like, hey, why did you buy from us in the first place? What was it about us that made you pick us over other solutions? A lot of people are afraid to ask those questions because they don't want to hear like, I don't know, we're not going to pick you again because you kind of suck and we're going to, be moving on. However, if you're not asking, they're probably already looking anyway, because customers these days are less loyal than ever before. And it's so much easier to switch than it ever used to be. And being the default option is not really a thing anymore. So I would first start with your current customer base. But there are all kinds of solutions and tools and teams out there who can help, who you can say, okay, I want to talk to women in their 30s who live in California, who are in the market to buy this particular solution. And we can go out and source those kinds of people to bring them in to talk to you and to do research and focus groups and conversations. And a lot of the major companies out there are doing that and spending all this time. And that's why they keep winning, is because they're building things for the marketplace based on demand and not just building things for the executive C-suite or whoever the highest paid person in charge decided to build.
And so again, putting ego aside and asking your clients or your prospects what it is that they need, and then building based on that. That's a journey in itself. That requires resources. It requires, ideation. It requires intent. How often should organizations be doing this?
The rate of change that we are experiencing as a population is out of control and unsustainable right now. And the things that I am seeing change, which would have used to take, let's just say, a year or 2 years for the market to fully saturate on an idea, and all of those early adopters have already got it, and then we have that middle group, and then those laggards come along eventually. That is happening so much faster. The market is changing faster than we can possibly comprehend. And so being more focused and specific and having a real intent behind what you're doing is more important than ever before. Because if you are just kind of putting things out there and hoping to attract anyone to your business, you are going to be disappointed. If you are putting very specific calls out there, things that only your perfect customer will see as a call or an invitation to them, then you are going to be a great fit for those customers. The sales process will be easier and they will stay, which is ultimately great for your long-term growth. But it's too rapid right now for any other answer than constantly.
Love that. I was a part of a conference just over last week, and we were talking about customer personas and how important that customer persona is, even for small businesses, let alone large.
Yeah.
And once you know exactly what your customer is looking for, and one of the conversation points was, you need to interview these folks. You need to understand exactly what their pains are. You need to understand what they're going through, what their journey is. And
Yeah.
going as far as even labeling and naming that persona is what they were
Yeah.
talking about. And that gets you the real insights. So yes, you said it's ongoing, but once you've built that persona, I guess it's not that hard of an effort to constantly keep tweaking it versus rebuilding over and over again. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, definitely don't rebuild. It's all about like do the heavy lifting to get the initial foundation in place and then make minimal changes over time. Building personas is hard, right? And there's a difference between the persona you aspire to have and the persona you actually have, right? And a lot of times people will build for the persona they want to have as customers. And so I might ask you like, so TJ, tell me, who is your ideal customer? And then you might say something like, well, people who are super rich and have a lot of disposable income they can give me. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Well, that is an aspirational customer. Those are what everybody wants. Everybody wants those. They're few and far between. So tell me about who is your real customer. And as soon as I take the fancy word of persona out of the conversation, people stop thinking aspirationally and start thinking in reality because they can imagine Alyssa sitting in a coffee shop with a real human being with real problems. And that becomes your persona, not just the one you wish to have or the one that fits your bottom line.
I love that. I love that. And even as you're talking about that, I can go right back and visualize my actual client that I work with. And I know exactly who it
Mm-hmm.
is. And you said you start listing out the problems. I know exactly the list of problems that they're facing. But to your point, when you're trying to create a persona, it's like, what do they look like? What are they? It becomes more challenging.
Right.
And that goes back to, I guess, the beginning of the conversation is you're no longer selling once you understand your client to that extent, to that level where they're coming into you, they've read about you, they know what you solve for, they know they have the problems. So now they're coming in for that validation, that trust. So it's a
Yeah.
whole ecosystem, I would say. And so if I were to ask you from all of that, when you've built that persona for your client, how do you now create the strategy for the content that they're consuming or the information or the marketing collateral they're consuming to get to you to book that call to close the deal or to let the deal close on its own?
You have to picture every stage of that journey through the lens of that persona. So, and it's really hard to do. It requires you to essentially disassociate from your own self, your own identity, your own experiences, and truly flex that empathy muscle for your customer. Not, and like I use that word very sparingly because it's gotten a little bit, people are confused by what it really means. It means that I can feel what you feel. I can take myself out of my own experiences. I can push aside my own history and see the world through your eyes. And so we need to see every piece of our journey through the eyes of our customer. And if there's something in there that has to be done for whatever reason, right? They have to do this particular onboarding form for whatever reason. How can you frame that in a way that explains to the customer, like, hey, we need you to do this onboarding form so that you get benefit of X, Y, and Z, right? And frame everything through how will your customer experience this? A lot of people will present the benefits of their product or service in a way that makes sense to them. And they forget that your customer doesn't have the context, experience, or background that you do, and that you are not your customer. And they won't remember that the customer didn't sit in that 4-hour meeting where you discussed the copy for the landing page and all the pieces that went into it and all the conversations that happened around it. They weren't on the 55 email thread or Slack message chain discussing all of these parts and pieces. So, will they still understand what you're trying to do if you erased all of that context that you have as the creator? And will they still feel interest and validation that this is the right program for them when all they have is the very surface level, not all the thought process or context that went into the creation of it?
I love that. Love that. Listen, like, there's so much there that when we go into sales, we start looking at, well, let me take the script and let me take this information, let me just go pitch it. What
Right.
you're talking about is very different. You're talking about building everything out there for each of your prospects. And I say each because everyone's going to have a unique journey coming into it. So each
Yes.
of your prospects coming in, and then it leads right down to what you're talking about is we're not selling anymore. You're now really educating, you're aligning, and you're making every deal yours to lose.
Exactly.
So I love it. So that's essentially how you win deals without selling.
And in my opinion, it's going to be the only way sales will function in the 21st century. Nobody wants to be sold to. Nobody wants to sit through a pitch. Everybody wants to solve their problems and find value. So let's just skip to the good part, skip to the end, and have some dessert first and get to that point where nobody has to be sold to anymore and be in an era of post sales.
So thank you. And with that, we'll switch right over to our rapid fire segment. I think we covered a lot there. We got a lot of insights there. In the rapid fire, I'm going to ask you a few questions and come up with the first one or two word answers that come to your mind as soon as you hear the question. So first of all, it's an easy one. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Okay. First word that comes to mind when you hear sales.
Ew.
Biggest deal killer in one word.
Talking too much. 3 words.
That's there you go. There we go. That's okay. One word that defines a great leader.
Aware.
Hmm. Your favorite word in business.
More than one word. Have a great weekend.
Okay. I was going to say God works too, but
Yes.
what's harder, winning or keeping?
Keeping.
Finish the sentence. The best deal starts with.
The customer.
Okay. And if you could talk to animals outside of any pets you have and outside of any plants, which would you want to speak to?
Birds. They see everything, and I like to know things.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Alyssa, thank you very much for this. This was an incredible session. I'm inspired. I'm inspired to go out and rebuild my customer personas and understand that journey even further. And I'm sure our listeners got a lot of value out of that as well. Any final words for our audience?
Do whatever it takes to create great customer experiences. Don't forget about your employees, and we will all move into a great future of work together.
Awesome. Alyssa, thank you very much for being on.
Thanks for having me.